Hey guys, tonight we're tiptoeing into something so strange, so oddly poetic, that if it weren't rooted in real history, you'd think I'd made it up in a half-asleep dream after eating too much cheese. Imagine this. It's the dead of night in Hanyang, the capital of the Joseon Dynasty, what we now call Seoul. The stars are smeared behind a veil of thin silk clouds, and the stone streets whisper beneath tiny, soft footsteps. But not human footsteps. These belong to something fuzzier, nimbler, far stealthier. Cats. Yes, cats. Slipping in and out of alleys, balancing along tiled rooftops, tails high like antennae tuned to secrets. These aren't your average strays. They're on a mission. And no, not some imperial surveillance program. These little agents are delivering forbidden love letters across the palace walls. You wouldn't last 10 minutes in this world. Seriously, you'd trip over your own hanbok and get arrested by a palace guard before your second breath. But the cats? The cats thrived. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Midnight in Boston? 5 a.m. in Manila? Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in a narrow alley, stone-paved and slick with evening mist. The wooden walls on either side groan quietly in the breeze. Somewhere far off, the slow beat of a night watchman's wooden clapper echoes like the ticking of an ancient clock. Hanyang doesn't sleep. It drifts, and you're just passing through its forgotten corners. A shadow darts across your feet. Not a rat. A cat. Snow white, with glowing yellow eyes like twin moons. It pauses just long enough to glance up at you with pure disdain. Don't follow me, it seems to say. I've got work to do. Then, like a four-legged ninja, it disappears behind a low wall into a quiet garden. You follow, careful not to disturb a hush. The garden gate creaks open. Jasmine perfumes the air. Under the flicker of a distant oil lamp, a young woman in a plain hanbok crouches beside the white cat. She ties something small to its back, a tightly rolled scroll, bound with red thread. Nobody says a word. The cat stretches, hops onto a stone platform, and vanishes into the dark. Simple. No theatrics. But you just witnessed one of the stranger truths of the Joseon Dynasty. A quiet, centuries-old network of feline couriers shuttling love letters across a deeply conservative kingdom. Joseon Korea was known for its strict Confucian ideals, social hierarchies, and ironclad morality. Romantic relationships, especially involving palace maids or noble daughters, were strictly controlled, often impossible. Girls lived behind high walls, guarded not just by servants and gates, but by the invisible weight of honor. But even in that ironclad world, love found cracks. And in those cracks, cats slipped through. Behind you, a soft scratching noise. Another cat, gray round, unbothered, hops up onto a wooden window ledge. Around its neck, a silk collar embroidered with plum blossoms. Beneath the collar, a folded piece of hanji paper. You can smell the ink. Love letters back then weren't just notes. They were poetry. Full verses quoting Tang and Silla poets, likening a beloved's eyes to the moon over Janghoru Pavilion. Every stroke of the calligraphy brush carried a breath, a heartbeat, a hope. You touch the cold stone wall beside you and wonder how many confessions have passed unseen here. Some made it, some didn't. Cats were caught, letters destroyed, hearts left wondering. But still, night after night, someone would write, someone would wait, and a cat would run. There's even a story historians still debate. A group of night guards swore they saw a ghost, a white, floating shape darting across the rooftops. Panic spread. A ritual was held to chase away evil spirits. Turns out, it was a minister's daughter's cat named Dalgy or Strawberry, sneaking off with her lip balm tied to its tail. Funny, yes, but it could have ended badly. Evidence of a secret letter? Punishable, even for a cat. You keep walking. Somewhere in the distance, another cat meows softly. You follow the sound down a narrower alley where paper lanterns swing gently overhead. The scent of fresh tea cakes floats through the night, sweet enough to make your stomach flutter. But you're not here to eat. You're here to uncover something stranger than fiction. Something furry, silent, and romantic in the weirdest possible way. There's even a record from a famous scholar named E. Munchong. In his diary, he wrote, "The neighbor's cat leaves footprints in my courtyard each night, and a folded letter. I do not read them, but my heart races with each new paw print. In this corner of the world, cats weren't just animals. They were symbols of yearning, of quiet rebellion, of dreams whispered between closed doors. And when you hear one meow in the night, know this. Somewhere, someone just sent their heart and hoped it landed, maybe even with you. You're still in that alley, still in the hush of a Hanyang midnight, but something has shifted. A flicker in the air, a scent, orchid and old ink, and then, drifting on the breeze, something flutters down at your feet. It's a scroll. No, not a scroll exactly. It's small hand-rolled hanji paper, bound with crimson silk thread, so fine, it looks spun from a dream. You bend down. The paper is soft, as though aged by waiting. You hesitate, but of course you open it. Inside is a poem, just 4 lines. If I were wind, I'd drift through your screen door. If I were rain, I'd slip down your collar. That's it. No name, no signature, just longing, compressed like a pressed flower. You look up, but whoever left it is long gone, or perhaps never close at all. And somewhere, surely, another scroll is already on its way to someone else. Because in the Joseon Dynasty, love letters didn't wait. They traveled, and sometimes they traveled in pause. Tonight, we follow one. A few streets away, behind a seemingly innocent apothecary shop, a young scholar in dark robes adjusts the wick of his oil lamp. His study smells of ginseng, ink, and nervous sweat. On the desk, beside a stack of Confucian classics, is another scroll, its twin, this one unfinished. He dips his brush, pauses, then writes the final line. Meet me when persimmons turn red. You can tell by his face he'll never send it directly. That would be a scandal, a breach of decorum, a family disgrace. But the girl who brings herbs from the palace kitchens, her cat, that's another story. He reaches down and scratches the ears of a striped calico lounging at his feet. She stretches, yawns, knows exactly what's coming. She's done this before. She's paid in smoked mackerel and gentle belly rubs. But make no mistake, she's a pro. The scholar folds a scroll, ties with a knot that only lovers or desperate poets use, and slips it into a little pouch sewn under the cat's sash. She blinks, jumps to the windowsill, and vanishes into the night. You, of course, follow. She moves with casual urgency, padding across tiled rooftops and narrow walls, like she knows every crack in the city, which she probably does. The calico pauses once a bat at a moth, business and pleasure, you know, then ducks under a cloth awning into a marketplace sleeping in its own dust. Here's a fun fact. Historians have actually found references to cat couriers buried in family records, offhand remarks and personal letters about the cat's delivery, or cryptic warnings like, "Beware the furred one at the west gate." Scholars still argue over whether this was metaphor or literal feline espionage, but the references are there, subtle and strange. Even more bizarre, some cats were trained with food patterns. One clergyman, who shall remain nameless for the sake of his dignity, reportedly trained his neighbor's cat to expect dried anchovies every time it delivered a poem. The cat got fat, and eventually suspicion was raised. But back to your night. The cat you're following slinks into a side garden behind a kitchen outpost just inside the palace walls. A small fire still burns low, a few embers flickering in the brazier. A kitchen maid sits with her back to you, brushing her hair by candlelight. She doesn't startle when the cat enters. She just whispers, "Did he write again?" The cat doesn't answer, but her paw swipes delicately at the pouch, tugging it forward. The girl retrieves the letter as though it's warm. She holds it to her chest first, then finally reads. Her expression is not dramatic. No tears, no gasps, just a softening. The kind of change that only someone deeply tired and deeply hopeful can show. A private moment, unseen by the world, except you're here, watching history sneak past the records. There's something a little ridiculous about this, right? You're following cats through ancient Korea, watching people risk disgrace and exile just to say, "I like you, please notice me." But then again, isn't that kind of the most human thing? Back in the alley, the calico curls up under a warm lantern and begins cleaning her tail. Mission complete. No thanks necessary. Just vibes. You sit nearby, on a wooden box that smells like old rice and camphor oil. The city exhales around you. You start to wonder, how many scrolls like this are floating through the night? Hundreds? Thousands? Not all love letters. Surely, some are probably angry, some hopeful, some weirdly poetic about radishes. There's one recorded case, though scholars still bicker about it, where a cat allegedly carried a breakup letter. Cold. The recipient was devastated. The cat still demanded fish. And so the scrolls kept moving. Each scroll told you more than what it said. It told you about risk, about agency in a world where most choices were made for you. For women in particular, in palace walls or noble homes, a letter was rebellion, a whisper that cut through the silence. You stand up. A breeze rustles the paper lanterns again. A cat somewhere yowls in the distance, a low, annoyed sound, like someone's been keeping her from a snack. You smile. Even if the scrolls don't survive, the stories do. And tonight, you're part of one. You're drifting deeper now, not just through alleys and courtyards, but through a growing web of whispers and claw prints that stretch across the palace and beyond. If the last scroll was a confession, the next is a conspiracy. Because here's the thing no one tells you about the Joseon court. It wasn't just all robes, rituals, and lectures about filial piety. It was also gossip. Luscious, dangerous gossip. And cats? They weren't just delivering declarations of love. They were listening, watching, sometimes carrying secrets far bigger than romance. You slip through a crumbling stone gate into a quieter part of the city. The wind smells like damp wood and pickled radish. A paper talisman flaps lazily on a doorframe. Some families attempt at warding off bad spirits. You almost laugh. They should have tried warding off cats. Much sneakier. A low chuff echoes behind you. Another feline. This one is black with one white paw and the kind of stare that says, "I know what you did last summer." It's perched like a little emperor atop a stack of firewood, watching two figures huddle beneath an oil lamp. They speak in hushed tones. Palace guards off duty, trading rumors like coins. You heard about the eunuch in the Western Quarter? No. They found a letter, hidden under his pillow, from a court lady. Was it signed? Worse. Perfumed. They both shudder. You do too. Not because of the scandal. It's honestly kind of romantic, but because you know what's coming, an investigation. Which means someone's going to want to know how that letter got through the palace gates. Cue the cats. See, within the tangled etiquette court life, cats were everywhere. Some were pets. Some were strays. Some were adopted by officials who didn't want to admit they were lonely. Most roamed freely, sleeping on scrolls, knocking over inkstones, and occasionally leaving a dead mouse on the king's slipper as a gift, a threat. Historians debate this too. But a select few had learned patterns. Routes between kitchens and laundry courtyards, servant halls and back staircases. And every now and then, they became the perfect middle fur for information that couldn't pass through human hands. Tonight, your mysterious black and white friend slinks down from the firewood pile and vanishes behind a gate. You follow naturally. When you? Behind the gate lies the Night Watch courtyard, headquarters of the royal guards. You expect silence. You get snoring. Deep, exhausted, mouth-open snoring. One guard helmet is rolled off and now cradles a sleeping cat like a very confused rice bowl. On the far wall, faint scratches in the dust, cat tracks. You trace them to a wooden beam where something small is wedged between planks. You reach in and it's a letter. Another one. But this isn't poetry. Lanterns will go out at second bell. Use the water path. Avoid the left side corridor. A message. A plan. And look closer. A faint paw print in the corner, almost like a signature. Whoever wrote this trusted a cat with their escape. This isn't unusual. There are folk stories, even formal records, about royal concubines who tried to flee the palace. Most were caught, but one Lady Yun, though her real name remains uncertain, left behind a scandalous trail. Lovers' poems, coded letters, and the peculiar habit of leaving food out for strays just before important accidents happen around the palace. Fire in a storage shed, disappearing laundry, a misplaced key. Modern historians argue whether she trained cats herself or simply took advantage of their routines. But one note recovered decades later from a sealed box read, "The black one comes back by dawn. Leave it nothing sweet. Makes him gassy." You can't make this up. Or, well, you could, but someone already did hundreds of years ago and lived it. Back in the courtyard, another cat appears. Tabby this time. Slight limp. Eyes like jade marbles. It carries a pouch of silk between its teeth. Too small for a letter. You squint. Inside is a ring. Not gold. Not even bronze. Just carved jade. Probably symbolic. Tied with a single red thread. Someone is making a promise. Or breaking one. It's funny, isn't it? The more rules a society builds, the more creative its people get in bending them. Joseon Korea was all about order, harmony, proper roles, and restrained emotions. And yet, under all that perfection, cats were slipping between the cracks, carrying the messy, heartfelt, inconvenient truth of human desire. They say dogs are loyal and honest. Cats? Cats are subtle. Cats know how to survive in a world that pretends feelings don't exist. That's why they were perfect. You're sitting now, legs folded, listening to the echo of footsteps in the halls beyond. One eunuch passes, stops, stares at the cat near you, and whispers, "Is that the emperor's cat?" The feline turns its head very, very slowly. The eunuch pales, bows to the cat, and scurries off. You think he's joking. You hope he's joking. But this was Joseon. And in Joseon, sometimes even cats outrank people, especially when they carried your secrets. Somewhere far off, a bell tolls. Second watch. The time for shifting guards, relighting lamps, and pretending your eyes haven't just read something they shouldn't. The cat licks its paw. You wonder what it knows. Then again, so does everyone. You trail behind the echo of paws now. Faint, rhythmic, indifferent to your presence. You pass the edge of the palace walls and slipped into the outer quarters, where scribes sleep and Confucian scholars dream of examinations. It's quieter here, more rigid. But don't be fooled. Even here, beneath the starched collars and moral lectures, the cats are working overtime. And tonight, one scroll will stir more than just hearts. It'll rattle the Confucian cage. You find yourself in the shadow of the Songyeongwon, the Royal Academy. This is where the best minds in the kingdom memorize ancient texts until their eyes blur and their backs cramp. Think of it like a Harvard Joseon, except everyone's wearing robes and no one has had a decent nap in 5 years. By day, this place is a shrine to structure. Students bow at prescribed angles, debate the analects until their voices fray, and live by a schedule so tight it makes a Swiss watch seem lazy. But by night, the cats come out. There's one in particular you're following now. A sleek gray fellow with a half-torn ear and the casual arrogance of a librarian who knows more than you. He slips under the front gate of a small scholar's dormitory, past a row of paper scrolls hanging like polite curtains. Inside, a lamp burns low. A student, barely 20, hunched over, ink-stained fingers, glances up as a cat enters. He doesn't smile. He just exhales through his nose like, "You again." Then he digs into the lining of his sleeve and pulls out a folded page. No ribbon, no perfume, just plain script, written with trembling restraint. "You asked if I missed you. I only sleep when I don't." He hesitates for a moment, then adds, "Your poem last week was garbage, but I keep it under my pillow." He seals it quickly, slips it into the cat's collar pouch, and whispers, "To the second laundry courtyard. Don't flirt with the other cats on the way." The cat blinks. That's a no-promise face if you've ever seen one. Then it's gone, tail held high like a sarcastic flag of freedom. What's wild is this. Records show that students of the Royal Academy were not just discouraged from romance. They were outright forbidden. Love letters were considered emotional distractions. Unmanly, undisciplined. There was an actual punishment called jiaxio, where a student caught in emotional misalignment could be publicly scolded or temporarily exiled from campus. But that didn't stop them. Oh no, they just got smarter and sneakier and fluffier. Some students trained temple cats to walk pre-measured distances between dorms and outbuildings. They timed their walks, counted their steps, even created tiny bell systems to signal a safe pickup. It became an underground art. The feline postal network, a Confucian love. To this day, there's a poem preserved in one scholar's personal journal, never published, never recited, written in honor of his cat. I cannot write her name, but I write yours, soft-pawed courier, who delivers what I cannot say, and never breaks the seal. I mean, come on, that's adorable, and sad, and probably illegal back then. You turn a corner and find yourself in a courtyard filled with laundry lines. Robes in varying shades of gray and white flap gently in the wind like scholarly ghosts. A tabby cat leaps between baskets. Another one sits on a folded blanket, licking itself with complete disregard for your reverence. And there, at the edge of the stone path, is the recipient. She's not a noble, not a court lady, just a laundress. But she holds herself with poise, her sleeves rolled, her fingers stained with soap and winter. She kneels slowly to greet the gray cat, unties the pouch with the skill of someone who's done this a dozen times, and reads the letter. She doesn't smile, but her eyes change, the same way your room looks different when someone lights a single candle. She tucks the letter into her sash, gives the cat a boiled anchovy from her sleeve pocket. Yes, really. And then strokes its head, gently, reverently, like she knows this animal has crossed ideological battlefields to get to her. Not every love story was mutual. Some cats return with unopened scrolls, or worse, with scrolls rewritten, sharp rejections wrapped in politesse. One student's diary tells a reply that simply read, "If I loved you, I'd tell you myself, not your cat." Ouch! Still, they kept trying. In a world where feelings had no sanction place, even rejection was proof that someone had heard you. And the cats? They just kept walking. Sometimes they stopped for food. Sometimes they changed routes without warning. One even allegedly got jealous and began burying letters in flower pots instead of delivering them. Whether that's true or the poetic license of a heartbroken nerd is up for debate. In any case, the cats remained faithful to no one, only to the thrill of movement, of crossing borders, of outwitting humans. You settle near the edge of the academy wall. The wind is picking up. Lanterns sway like they're nodding along. And somewhere, a cat meows, low, scratchy, probably annoyed that you're sitting in its favorite spot. But you don't move. You're thinking about all the things that were never meant to be spoken, about all the people who live so tightly wound in expectations they had to outsource their emotions to creatures who nap 18 hours a day. That's the magic of it, isn't it? The most disciplined minds in the country, whispering their secrets into fur. And tonight, you're one of them. The scent of wood smoke reaches you before the sound does. Crackling embers from some tucked-away stove, laced with a trace of roasted chestnuts. You're still in the capital, still inside the old city walls. But this place smells like home more than history. Somewhere between the sizzle of boiling broth and the rhythmic chop of a knife, someone's preparing breakfast at midnight. You're in the kitchens now, or rather, behind them, where the real business happens. And the cats? This is their kingdom. You crouch behind a stack of firewood, watching the quiet ballet of the palace night kitchen. No shouting, no fanfare. Just steam rising in curls and ladles stirring with hypnotic grace. 3 women move through the haze like ghosts, one kneading dough with thick, practiced hands, another grinding beans with slow, circular rhythm, and a third, young, wiry, scooping cooked rice into cloth bundles. She pauses, glances to the doorway, a flick of her eyes. That's when you see it. A ginger cat, small but confident, trots into the room like it owns the tile floor. It brushes against the rice girl's leg. She doesn't flinch, doesn't pet it either. Instead, she steps sideways, grabs a small object wrapped in green cloth from the wall beam, and ties it carefully to the cat's collar. Then she leans in, barely above a whisper. Go gently. No spilled soup this time. The cat blinks, as if offended by the memory, then slips out of the kitchen with all the pride of a diplomat. Here's what few know. Kitchen staff were some of the most connected people in the palace. They moved between sections, passed notes, overheard conversations, and, in many cases, serve as intermediaries for messages no one else could carry. But the most discreet channel of all? The cats who roamed the kitchen courtyards. They weren't always trained, but they were always observant. One cook once wrote in a marginal note, barely legible, crammed between recipes for fermented turnip and lotus root jelly. The ginger one waits by the pickled jar. When he smells ink, I feed him fish if he sits long enough to listen. Was the cat really listening? Who knows? But somehow the letters got through. Tonight, you follow that ginger cat. He hops onto a low wall, tail twitching, and disappears between two stacked water barrels. You trail behind, past coils of firewood and bundles of dried persimmons, until you emerge into a smaller courtyard. Lantern light flickers overhead. A woman is waiting. She's older than the rice girl, a court lady by her robes, perhaps a seamstress or record keeper, someone with access to names and fabrics, but not doors. She crouches as the cat arrives, unfastens a bundle from his collar, and opens it with deliberate calm. It's a letter, of course, but this one is different. It's not written on hanji. It's written on thin sheets of dyed rice paper, folded with precision into a flower. She unfolds it petal by petal. Inside is a single line. I saw your shadow in the dye vat. I almost bowed. She exhales, closes the paper like it might fly away, then turns and slips it into the lining of her sleeve. You wonder if they've ever spoken in person. Maybe once. Maybe never. Maybe their entire relationship exists through rice bundles and borrowed cats. It's strangely beautiful and strangely risky because, unlike scholars or nobles, the kitchen staff and palace servants had fewer protections. If they were caught passing notes, there were no warnings, no polite exile, just dismissal, or worse, shame. Yet still the letters moved. There's one tale, still debated among historians, of a legendary kitchen cat named Yomu. Supposedly, he lived for over 15 years, an eternity in cat years, and was known for delivering over 300 scrolls between the laundry and herbal wings. Some say he was fed by 3 different lovers. Others claim he once sat in a prince's lap and didn't flinch when someone dropped a hot ladle. True? Probably not. But records from that era do mention a cat with unusually stationary habits, often seen near laundry lines and medicinal gardens. Suspicious? Deeply. And then there's the weirdest part. One recipe book from the late 1700s has an entire margin filled with miniature paw prints, as if someone was trying to erase ink, or as if the cat was adding its own commentary. Either way, the cooks never wash the pages. Some secrets are better with a little grease on them. You duck beneath a low archway, following the ginger cat again. He's headed toward a storage shed now, one of the smaller ones, with doors made of slatted bamboo and tied with cord. Inside, under a hanging lantern and among basket of onions, a boy no older than 14 scribbles furiously on a bit of parchment. He's got flour on his cheek, a chip bowl by his foot, and in front of him, a second cat, black and white, watches with regal boredom. The boy finishes his letter, tucks it under the cat's ribbon, and murmurs, "This time, take it straight to her. No stopping at the fish stall." The cat yawns, and honestly, you get the feeling it's not listening. But later, someone will receive that note, and someone will smile, and maybe that's enough. You sit now in the warmth of the kitchen courtyard, back against a worn stone, steam curling from a chimney nearby. The cats move like smoke themselves, weaving through history without ever being noticed on purpose. You realize something. Food, like love, travels quietly. So do cats. And somewhere out there, another scroll is being tied to a collar. Another whisper is being cooked into a pot of broth. And another story like this one is just beginning. You blink, and the scene shifts again. Lanterns give way to moonlight, stone courtyards to rustling paper doors. And suddenly, you're no longer in the messy warmth of the kitchens. You're in a tiny wooden chamber tucked behind a curtain of silence, where ink stains the air more heavily than smoke, and everything smells faintly of pine, glue, and old books. This is the scribe's quarter, and tonight a letter is being born. You don't see her at first, only hear the scratch of brush on paper. It's the most intimate sound in the world, like breath, like someone writing their heart out so softly it barely disturbs the night. The girl sits cross-legged beside a lacquered box, a single oil lamp flickering on her right. Her hanbok is simple, unadorned, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her left hand is stained with ink. Her right glides a brush in smooth, practiced arcs. She's not just writing, she's sculpting. The paper she uses isn't plain hanji. It's lavender-dyed, delicately pressed with plum blossom fibers. Not expensive, but chosen, like a secret wrapped in color. The letter is half prose, half poetry. You read along, silent as the air. You said the day was cold. I wore the ribbon you gave me, and it burned through my sleeve like fire. I fed the cat this morning. She looked at me like you do. I think she knew what I was about to write. You pause. That line again. The cat, of course. Because sitting by the door, tail flicking with patient judgment, is the same tortoiseshell you glimpsed 2 nights ago near the palace kitchens. She's cleaned up now, fur smoothed, collar straightened, a new ribbon tied loosely around her neck. She's a regular. Clearly, the girl finishes her writing, seals it with wax, ties it with thread the same color as the cat's ribbon, and then, gently, she slips it into a hidden pocket sewn into the underside of the cat's harness. Yes, a harness. This cat has gear, and not just any gear. The leather is too fine, the stitches too precise. Someone made this on purpose. Probably the girl herself. A secret pocket for secrets, carried by fur. She leans in and whispers something into the cat's ear. You can't hear it, but the cat can. And off she goes without hesitation, out through the open door and into the night, as if she already knows the route by heart. You follow. The rooftops of the Sungin Wing are slick with dew. The cat's paws make no sound, but your shoes do, so you remove them. Now barefoot, you pace softly behind her as she zigzags between laundry lines and lantern hooks. She pauses once, licks her shoulder, waits, then continues, down a trellis, over a window ledge, through a shadowed veranda where a single guard stands half asleep, back turned. She's invisible to him. So are you. The cat makes her way to a narrow window. Inside, a flickering candle reveals another young woman, sitting upright on her bedding, already waiting. She doesn't seem surprised when the cat leaps in. She unties the ribbon, unfolds a note, reads quickly. Her face doesn't change, but her hands tremble just slightly. She refolds the paper, holds it to her chest, then tucks it beneath her bedding like a memory she's not ready to part with. And she whispers, "Tell her I miss her, too." The cat yawns. Whether understands or not, who can say? But it stays there a moment longer before hopping back out, tail swishing like a punctuation mark on silence. You're not imagining this. These aren't scattered incidents. There's real evidence, buried in estate records, personal letters, even scribbled into margins of genealogical scrolls, that certain women in the inner court kept cats for more than comfort. A scribal diary from 1782 includes this note: "The tortoise shell returned this morning with a new ribbon. Yellow this time. That means she's safe. Red means don't open." A code, a system, entire conversations happening without words, through colors, symbols, timing. It's almost absurd how sophisticated it became. But in a world where your entire life could be controlled, curated, and censored, a ribbon and a cat, that was liberation, even if only for a moment. There's one particularly strange account, still hotly debated by scholars. A court lady who allegedly never spoke a word aloud for over 2 years, but maintained a full relationship with another palace maid through cat-delivered letters. Her journal was found years later, sealed in a hollow compartment of her jewelry box, filled with dozens of pressed scrolls. Some funny, some desperate, some mundane. One ends simply with, "I watched you walk past today. I hope you knew that was enough." We don't know her name, but her cat's name, clearly written at the top of every letter. To be delivered by Nari. That's the part historians can't agree on, whether Nari was a real cat or pseudonym. Frankly, you followed enough cats tonight to know the truth. They were real, all too real. The tortoise shell is gone again now, off to somewhere else. Another door, another ribbon. You stand beneath a cherry blossom tree, just beginning to bud, even though it's not quite spring. A soft breeze rustles the branches. One petal falls, though there are barely any yet. And somewhere, maybe behind you, maybe across the compound, a brush meets paper once again. Another letter begins, and a cat waits. The rooftops stretch before you like scales on a sleeping dragon. Each one soaked in silver moonlight, each one whispering stories with every gust of wind. You're walking on them now, careful, barefoot, barely breathing. Not because of fear, because you're following something sacred, a cat with a mission. And tonight, it's not just slipping through kitchens or laundry courtyards. Tonight, it's crossing the sky. The palace roofs aren't flat. They slope, arch, fold into one another like waves on a tiled ocean. You didn't expect that, did you? You thought roofs were just roofs. But these are alive. They creak, they echo, they remember, and they are the secret highways of the feline underground. Your guide tonight is a long-legged white cat with soot-stained paws. She moves like she owns gravity, tightrope walking along narrow beams, pausing only to inspect an out-of-place pebble or a suspicious shadow. At her side, tied carefully with a strip of indigo cloth, is a tiny scroll. It flaps as she runs, barely audible over the night wind. You follow, silent, breath missing behind you, feet brushing dust that's older than most cities. She leaps from one tiled ridge to the next, lands without a sound. And below, in a chamber curtained with gauze, someone stirs. He's young, barely more than a boy, but wearing the robes of a noble, probably minor royalty. His room is immaculate, scrolls aligned, swords polished. Even the inkstone seems smug. But his eyes tell a different story. He's waiting, and when the cat drops down into the open lattice window, he doesn't flinch. He just kneels, carefully unties the cloth, and unrolls a message. No smile, just a long exhale, half relief, half ache. You peek. It's a list. Simple, soft, ordinary things that don't belong in any official record. The new soap in the bathhouse smells like barley. I stole a peach. I wish you had seen the sunset tonight. That's it. No titles. No flowery metaphors. Just the daily scraps of a life someone else wishes they could witness. This, more than anything, is what makes you pause. Because in a dynasty built on duty and hierarchy, this isn't rebellion. This is longing, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't shout, doesn't even whisper, just lingers. He ties a reply. No wax, no formal seal, and the cat bound off again. And now, your journey continues. There are recorded mentions, though sparse and always secondhand, of certain noble families training their house cats for rooftop travel, specifically at night. Some say it was for entertainment. Others, that it was for delivering laundry between quarters too far apart for servants to walk without drawing attention. But a few entries, particularly from women's diaries, mention more interesting uses. One note, from the private writings of a court, lady named Min Sienhua reads, "My cousin's cat knows the way across all 7 roofs between our homes. I wonder if he ever reads the letters first." We don't know the cousin's name, but we know the cat's. Baksham. The margins are filled with tiny drawings of him. Round belly, crooked tail, eyes that never blink. One shows him on a roof, carrying a scroll in his mouth. Another, sitting on a nobleman's lap with the caption, "Traitor." Apparently, Baksham changed loyalties halfway through a correspondence. Historians still debate whether this was bribery or pure feline mischief. You think it's both. The white cat stops now. You're at the peak of a royal residence. Below is a small pond, its surface catching stars like they've fallen and refuse to sink. On the far side, a figure waits on the steps, wrapped in a shawl, posture perfect, hands clasped. You can't see the face clearly, but the stance? That's someone born into posture, born into control. But when the cat arrives, they crumble just a little. A hand rises. The letter is retrieved. A breath held. They read. And for a moment, the whole palace tilts. You don't know what the letter says. You don't need to, because something just shifted, like when you open a drawer and find something that should have been lost forever, like when a voice says your name for the first time in months, like love, but whispered. There's an unofficial story passed among older palace caretakers about a cat that once leapt from the eaves of the giant hall pavilion all the way to the royal library roof. No one saw it land. They only heard the scroll unravel in midair and the sound of pages fluttering down into the koi pond. The cat never returned. Some say it was chased by dogs. Others say it disappeared because its message was too heavy. The most romantic version? That it delivered one final letter, then went to sleep on the clouds. You look up. Tonight, there are no clouds, just stars, and rooftops, and cats. The white one curls on a beam now, grooming her paw with a nonchalance that borders on insulting. She's just facilitated a royal confession, and now, nap time. You sit beside her, feeling the chill of the tiles seep into your legs. And then you notice something, tiny scratches carved into the beam beside you. Not claw marks. Letters. Tiny, almost illegible, worn down by time. You lean in. It says, "I waited. You came. That was enough." And beneath it, scratched even smaller, "Thank you, cat." You close your eyes and listen. Somewhere, another set of paws crosses another rooftop. Somewhere, another letter is tucked into fur. And somewhere, someone is writing even now. Because love in the Joseon Dynasty didn't always walk through doors. Sometimes it climbed the roof. The air feels thicker now, warmer. Not from the weather, but from something subtler, silk, perfume, secret stitched into clothing. You're no longer in the quiet wings of kitchens or rooftops. You've crossed into richer territory. Welcome to the inner halls of the noble class. And yes, the cats have made it here too. Only this time, they wear ribbons that cost more than a peasant's yearly wage. You're standing outside the residence of a Yongband family, Korea's hereditary aristocrats. Their homes are pristine. Lanterns hang like frozen flames. Gardens bloom even at night. And the guard are less interested in guarding and more in pretending they haven't noticed anything unusual. The outer doors slide open with a whisper. A servant steps out holding a tray of fruit. Trailing behind her is a feline, sleek, pure black, with a ribbon of indigo and jade tied neatly around its neck. The kind of cat that doesn't walk. It glides. But that's not what stops you. It's the way both servant and guard step aside as the cat passes, as if they know, as if they've been told. When that one walks by, don't ask questions. So of course you follow. The black cat saunters through the polished corridors like it pays rent. At one point, it pauses to stretch beside an incense brazier, its silhouette flickering against the rice paper walls like a living ink painting. And then movement. A door opens, and a noble woman steps out. She's not young, not old either, somewhere in between. Hair pinned perfectly, hanbok layered in soft tones of pine green and ivory. But her eyes are anything but still. They flicker like candlelight in a breeze. She kneels beside the cat and, without a word, removes a scroll from beneath its collar. She doesn't open it right away. She just holds it, presses it to her lips, then places it delicately into the sleeve of her robe. You almost think she's going to walk away, but then she surprises you. She speaks. "To think I ever loved him for his poems," she says, "when his cat writes with more loyalty than he does." Oof! That's not the first jab of the night, and it won't be the last. Because in these noble halls, the cats don't just carry love. They carry strategy. There's a little-known corner of Joseon history, tucked between military reports and etiquette manuals, that hints at something peculiar. Aristocrats using cats to send coded messages, not to lovers, but to rivals. One record describes a noblewoman who allegedly sent a cat with a message that simply read, "The apricot tree no longer flowers." 3 days later, her brother's marriage was called off. Coincidence? Maybe. But a diary entry from a would-have-been bride includes this line: "I knew when the cat arrived wearing mourning colors. I burned the letter unopened." Another tale, equally murky, involves two wealthy families whose sons kept sending cats back and forth, not for romance, but for escalating petty insults. One scroll read, "At least my poetry rhymes." The return scroll, "At least mine is read by humans." Eventually, the cats refuse to go near either household. You can't blame them. But let's not pretend the noble class was immune to actual affection. In fact, they often took it further, pairing silk-wrapped scrolls with perfume sachets, flower petals, even jewelry. One cat reportedly delivered a jade comb tied to a scroll that said, "If I could, I would comb your hair myself, but I fear I'd get tangled in it." Gag-worthy? A little. Effective? Absolutely. There's even a preserved pouch from that era, embroidered with a cat chasing a butterfly. Hidden in the lining was a dried sprig of chamomile and a scrap of poetry too faded to fully read, except for one legible line: "Come to me when the lantern's dim." A time signal. A code. These cats weren't just carriers. They were clocks. Tonight, your black ribbon companion pauses before a shuttered door. The moonlight casts her shadow long against the stone path, and then, Soft footsteps. The door opens. It's a young nobleman, unmarried by the look of it, barefoot, hair still damp from a bath, a scroll already in hand. He's expecting this. He bends low to greet the cat, whispers something in her ear, then attaches his reply. No flourish, no poetry, just folded paper. But when he rises, his fingers linger, not on the cat, on the air where her fur had brushed his palm, like he's trying to remember how warmth feels. Historians argue about this part of Joseon society constantly. Did the aristocracy really send messages via cats? Wouldn't they have had better methods? Wouldn't it be beneath them? Maybe. But then again, when you live in a world where even your tears are judged for decorum, sometimes the only honest way to speak is with silence wrapped in fur. And a lot of these families, they had plenty of silence. So the cat spoke for them. As the black feline disappears down another corridor, you take a seat by a low wall near the courtyard. The lanterns sway gently. Somewhere, wind chimes sing a single, wavering note. You look up, and you realize these cats don't belong to anyone. They move freely between lovers, rivals, servants, nobles. They cross lines that humans dare not. They carry poems and plots in the same collar. And they never, ever tell your secrets, unless you forget to feed them. The night deepens, and the wind sharpens its whisper. You've left the well-kept quarters of noble families behind, and now step into a quieter part of the palace, a place of shadows and medicine. Here, the air tastes of herbs and ash. Shelves stretch ceiling-high, cluttered with jars of powdered root, bundles of dried leaves, and scrolls tied with waxed twine. It smells like someone boiled the forest and poured it into the floorboards. Welcome to the apothecary wing. And yes, there are cats here too. You first notice them by their tails, curling and swishing beneath wooden benches and herb-laden carts. 4, maybe 5. It's hard to tell in the dim light. But one thing is clear. This place belongs to them. You slip behind a row of cabinets filled with labeled vials, ginger root, matan bark, dried foxglove, and then, tucked between 2 jars labeled ginseng and secret, sits a ceramic bowl, not for medicine, for fish bones. One of the cats, an orange tabby with a scar down its nose, pokes its head into the room. It's carrying something. No, not a scroll this time. A pouch, tiny, worn, tied with black silk cord and slightly damp, as if it had been buried beneath a rice barrel before being retrieved. The cat drops the pouch beside a hunched figure at the corner table. You edge closer. The man is old, thin, dressed in robes that hang like memories. His hands tremble as he opens a pouch, but only slightly. Inside there's no letter, only a flower, a dried one, mugwort, maybe, or artemisia. Hard to say. He studies it like it's a poem, then smiles, and whispers, still breathing, then. There are stories, not many but persistent, about palace herbalists who use cats to pass medical samples and coded warnings. Not just between physicians, but between patients too. In a palace so thick with politics that even a cough could mean accusation, these feline messengers weren't just carrying flirtation. They were saving lives. One account, scribbled hastily in the corner of a surgical logbook, describes a situation where the tincture was denied by the chief herbalist, but a substitute was delivered regardless by the gray cat behind the laundry barrels. Was it illegal? Absolutely. Life-saving? Probably. Documented? Barely. Still, some facts hold. The cats moved, and people got better. Or worse. but always they knew. Tonight, the orange tabby nudges the old man's wrist again. He chuckles, offers a slice of dried persimmon from a ceramic plate, and says, "You greedy devil. Go on. She's waiting." He slips another pouch into the cat's collar, this one firmer, probably containing herbs, and off it goes, vanishing into the dark like a rumor. You follow again. This time, down the outer corridor of the apothecary wing, where a single lantern swings above the door to the women's infirmary. A girl waits there, barely more than 16, cheeks pale, hair tied back with cloth band. When the cat arrives, she kneels so quickly you'd think she dropped something. She takes the pouch, unties it, sniffs it once. Relief, then a whisper, "Thank you for not forgetting." She looks at the cat like it understands. Honestly, it probably does. She hides a pouch inside her sleeve, brushes her hand once along the cat's back, and disappears into the infirmary without another word. You sit on the steps. The wind smells different here, warmer, bitter, alive, as if steeped in 1,000 cups of root tea and quiet sorrow. You think of all the times someone didn't have the words to say, "I care," or "I see you," or "I want you to live." So they sent a leaf, or a scent, or a scroll tied in linen that smelled like healing. There's a folk story whispered in rural provinces, never formally recorded but told again and again. A healer in the mountains kept a cat trained to detect illness. If the cat sat beside you when you were coughing, you would recover. If it avoided you, well, one day the cat visited the palace. It never came back. Some say it lives beneath the floorboards of the herbal wing, guiding the others. Some say it left after curing one final soul. Some say it was never a real cat. You sit thinking about that, and then something brushes against your ankle. The orange tabby back again. He sits, looks up, and in that moment, it's not about love or secrets or coded rebellion. It's just about being there, about a warm body, a presence, a connection. He yawns, licks his paw, and climbs into your lap like it's the most obvious thing in the world. You exhale. For the first time tonight, you're not chasing anyone. You're simply still, because sometimes history doesn't gallop. It curls up beside you and purrs. Ink. That's the first thing you notice as you cross into the eastern wing of the palace. An overwhelming scent of wet ink and pressed paper, sharpened reeds, and candle smoke. You're in the heart of the Royal Archives now, a world built on scrolls and silence. This is where stories are trapped in neat rows, where history is clipped and categorized, where truth, whatever it once was, has been rewritten for generations. But tonight, a cat is about to scribble a footnote. You slip behind a long wooden cabinet stuffed with scrolls bundled in twine. Every bundle is labeled in brushstrokes, so clean you could shave with them. The archivists here don't sleep. They copy, preserve, redact. Their job is not to feel, only to record, except one of them does feel. You see her now, a young woman, hunched over a narrow desk, eyes glassy from hours of transcription. She dips her brush again and again into a stone inkwell, hands moving in a rhythm somewhere between trance and exhaustion. Her hanbok sleeves are rolled neatly to the elbow. Her wrist is ink-stained. Her eyes are not tired. They are burning. You creep closer, and then you see it. On the edge of her desk, tucked beneath a pile of imperial census rolls, a letter, folded and signed, but slightly worn at the edges, as if it's been opened, then opened again. Your handwriting has ruined me. I dream in your strokes. Oof! And next to the letter, a small scrap of ribbon, tied to nothing. Yet, until a gray cat with white paws leaps silently onto the desk. The archivist doesn't react. She's too used to this. With one hand, she reaches down to a wooden drawer and produces a new scroll, blank. She writes, fast and breathlessly, as though the words are escaping her. The census records were dull today. But I saw your name on the list, and that was enough to keep breathing. She rolls it, ties it, slips it into a cloth pouch, and fastens it to the cat's collar. Be careful, she whispers. They've started watching the ledgers. The cat yawns in response, then vanishes into the stacks like a whisper that never wanted to be heard. You follow, of course. Here's something weird. While palace historians and court recorders were meticulous about official accounts, they were strangely quiet about the cats. Very few references exist in formal annals. But if you look sideways at letters between scribes, at scratched-out margins, at copies of imperial poems, you start to see paw prints. Literally. One famous poem attributed to King Jeongjo contains a suspicious smudge beside a line about longing. When examined closely, the blot looks uncannily like a feline toe bean. Scholars argue it was accidental, but in a footnote written decades later, a copyist adds, I suspect the blot is intentional. His Majesty's cat often wandered the archives when he was writing. Even kings couldn't keep them away. And in a place built on the illusion of permanence, the cats were the messengers of impermanence. They brought notes that couldn't be cataloged, feelings that couldn't be recorded, truths that didn't fit inside scrolls. They were what history left out. You emerge from the archive stacks into a narrow hallway, and there she is, the recipient, not another scribe, not a scholar, a cleaner. She's sitting on the floor, surrounded by dry brushes and half-used ink blocks. Her face is smudged with charcoal, but her hands are gentle as she lifts the pouch from the gray cat's collar. She doesn't open the scroll right away. She just holds it to her chest and closes her eyes. When she finally reads it, her breath hitches. She doesn't cry, but you can tell the words hit their mark. And when she's done, she pulls out a small brush, dips it in leftover ink, and scribbles a reply right there on the back of an old census form. You misspelled my name again. I'll let it slide. For now, she folds it. No ribbon, no seal, just pure mischief. She tucks it into the collar. The cat blinks slowly, like, really? This again? Then wanders off. You watch them both disappear, the girl into her shadows, the cat into another corridor. And the ink? It still hasn't dried. Later, as you rest against a cedar pillar beneath the archive's outer roof, you spot something carved into the wood beside you, a single sentence. Not all records are meant to last. You think about that for a long time. In a world where everything must be documented, lineage, taxes, punishments, blessings, how do you preserve something as soft and unsanctioned as love? You don't. You send it in a cat, and trust that it finds the right person before the ink fades. The palace is unusually quiet now. Even the wind has taken a break, as if holding its breath. Somewhere far off, a night watchman's bell rings twice. Then silence returns, thick and velvety. You're standing at the threshold of the royal chambers. This is not just another courtyard, not another kitchen. This is the inner sanctum, where rules are stricter, walls higher, and secrets sharper. And in the heart of it all, wrapped in silk, candles, and protocol, is the emperor's cat. You didn't expect the chamber doors to be open, but they are just enough for one sleek, silvery shape to slip through and out again, as though rehearsed. You see it now, long, elegant body, fur so well-groomed it almost shimmers. A cat built like a rumor, light, fast, and impossible to verify. Around its neck, a ribbon braided in 5 colors. Not palace standard. That's ceremonial. This cat is no ordinary Mauser. This cat belongs to the king. Or at least, stays close enough to borrow his scent. You follow, because how could you not? It turns sharply down a corridor and darts into a room you don't recognize. Smaller than you'd expect. Simple, almost Spartan. And there, standing beside an oil lamp, half dressed, half awake, is a young man, not the king, a royal scribe. He's still tying his robe as the cat leaps onto the windowsill, the silk pouch around its neck swinging like a pendulum. The scribe exhales hard, like he's been holding his breath since sunset. He unties the pouch and opens it carefully. Inside is a letter folded 5 times. Each fold carries weight. You lean in and catch the edge of a line. I heard your voice in the garden, and I wanted to answer, but I had already stepped into silence. What does that even mean? A rejection? A confession? A warning? He reads the rest silently. When he finishes, he doesn't speak, doesn't write a reply, just lowers his head, closes his eyes, and presses the letter to his forehead, as if it's prayer. What no textbook tells you. The emperor's inner court had more cats than advisors. Some were official, gifted by noble families. Others were strays that wandered into royal grace and never left. But one particular feline, according to a lesser-known palace ledger, was given a name, Bayalbi Star Rain. She appeared in multiple documents, never the focus, always a footnote. Bayalbi was found napping on the king's lap during the poetry contest. Bayalbi stole 2 steamed dumplings and escaped into the lotus garden. Servant pursued her in vain. Bayalbi was last seen in the north wing, carrying a pouch not accounted for in the daily inventory. That last line caused quite a stir, because the pouch, it turned out, had not been inventory. It had been a letter to the royal consort. Tonight, as you move with the silver cat through deeper corridors, the mood changes. Tension, quiet like glass, as if every breath could shatter something. You find yourselves approaching a room lit by only a single candle, its flame curled into itself. The silver cat waits, scratches gently at the door. It opens. A woman answers. Not a court lady, not a servant, not a noble. She's older, plain robes, simple hair, but there's a heaviness to her presence, like she used to stand straighter, like she used to command more than silence. She sees the cat and exhales sharply, eyes pinching in memory. Still wearing that ribbon, she mutters, still pretending you don't know. She retrieves the letter, reads quickly, no tears. She reaches under her sleeve and produces a reply already written. This has happened before, many times. She ties it to the cat with fingers that don't shake, then strokes its back once, like muscle memory. Don't rush, she whispers, but don't linger. The cat blinks once, slowly, and vanishes. Some speculate that certain cats in the royal court were used as intermediaries not just for lovers, but for political messages too dangerous to write plainly. Warnings about faction plots, reports on consort behavior, even subtle requests for mercy. These weren't just scrolls. They were shields in a system so tightly controlled. Even the wrong question could be a death sentence. But a cat could walk into a room, deliver a sealed pouch, and walk out again without ever betraying what it knew, because cats don't confess. and they never write memoirs. You return to the outer corridor and sit against the wall, listening as the palace exhales around you. The silver cat slips past once more, heading back toward the Emperor's wing, no doubt to nap beside someone far more powerful than you. You smile, then you spot something strange in the torchlight. A small, carved stone tucked into the edge of the hallway. It bears a single phrase. If you cannot say it aloud, send the cat. You don't know who wrote it, but you know they weren't joking. Because tonight you followed paw prints through poetry, illness, rebellion, grief, humor, and now politics. And the cat hasn't missed a single step. Somewhere behind you, a distant gate creaks. You don't turn around. You've learned by now, if something important is coming, it'll arrive on 4 feet, without fanfare. You've been in the palace for hours now, drifting through chambers and courtyards, watching letters move like ghosts wrapped in silk. But here, now, you've stumbled into a war, a quiet one, and at the heart of it, cats. Still, of course. You find yourself in the narrow alleys between the eunuch dormitories, where palace politics are sharper than blades and twice as silent. The air here is tenser, not just in the way people walk, but in the way they don't walk at all, as if the very floor is listening. In a shadowed corner, 2 eunuchs whisper under their breath. One young, one older, both wrapped in midnight blue robes. The older one carries a fan, not for heat, but to shield his lips. The cats again, the younger asks. A pause, a glance. They're watching the gray one, the one with the folded ear. Why? It delivered a pouch to the inner quarters. No permission. Silence. Then a single phrase, barely audible. We may have to intervene. This is what no one likes to talk about. The crackdown. Because love is beautiful. Yes. Rebellious. Brave. But also illegal. In a court run by hierarchy and rules, the flow of unsanctioned letters was more than an inconvenience. It was a threat to stability, to power, to image. And the eunuchs, their job was to manage that power, which meant sometimes they chased the cats, not with swords, with silk nets, gentle, silent, deadly. You move through the corridor and spot the gray cat they mentioned, perched on a barrel, one ear folded like a crumpled fan, one paw licking furiously at a spot behind his neck. He looks unbothered, but the pouch on his collar? That's the problem. A flash of movement to your left. A eunuch, silent as breath, steps into the path. He reaches for the net at his side. Too slow. The gray cat vanishes. Not scared, just done with that nonsense. You duck behind a pillar and watch him slink beneath a servant's gate, disappearing into a part of the palace you haven't seen yet. You follow, quick, low, and find yourself in a half-forgotten garden overgrown with moss and moonlight. Bamboo creaks in the breeze. A bench crumbles from years of rain. It smells like endings here. But the cat? He's waiting. And someone's already here to meet him. A eunuch, younger than the others. Barely 20. He kneels quietly. No fear in his eyes. Just longing sharpened into discipline. He reaches out. The cat steps forward. The letter is exchanged. But before he opens it, he speaks. Not to the cat, to no one. They said I was lucky to serve the king. But I think I was luckier to know him. He opens the letter. It's short. He reads it, smiles, doesn't cry. But his voice shakes as he whispers. He remembered. And then, so gently it's barely there, he tucks the letter into a compartment in his sleeve and stands. just as two more eunuchs appear at the edge of the garden. The cat is already gone. Later, in an anonymous court journal, a short entry would appear. The gray cat has not returned. The net failed. The message was not intercepted. Historians still debate what it referred to, but one page earlier in the same handwriting, there is more loyalty in silence than in shouting. And in the margin, a crude sketch of a cat paw. No explanation. You sit on the crumbling bench now, the garden all around you breathing through moss and mist. Somewhere above, a bird flutters. Somewhere below, something small scurries. But the tension lingers, because for every letter delivered, someone else saw it, wondered, feared, tried to stop it. That's the thing about love. It terrifies people, especially the ones who've never dared send a letter of their own. There's a whispered tale, half legend, half warning, of a eunuch who tried to trap the cats, set a trail of fish to lure them in, built a tiny cage, tied it with palace insignia. The cat didn't fall for it, but that night he woke to find a letter on his pillow. No signature, no ink, just a paw print, and one sentence. If you were truly lonely, you would understand. He never chased the cats again. Some say he started leaving dried anchovies at his door. Others say he joined them. You think both. Because once you've seen what these cats carry, not just ink and ribbon, but hope, you stop trying to catch them and start letting them pass. You rise. The garden shivers behind you, but the scrolls still move, and the paws still carry them, even in places where silence is law. Because feelings, they never ask permission, and cats never apologize. The wind has shifted again. It's lighter now, cooler, tinged with music. You follow it. Not a song exactly, but the hesitant notes of a Gaegeum, plucked softly by fingers both unsure and longing. The sound threads through the air like a ribbon caught in motion, fluttering between stone walls and open windows. You're in the rear gardens of the music court. And if you're wondering, yes, the cats come here too. Because where there's music, there's feeling. And where there's feeling, there's always something that needs to be said quietly. You turn a corner and find her, a girl no older than 17, seated on a worn mat beneath a ginkgo tree, a Gaegeum resting across her lap like a sleeping child. Her hanbok is simple, sleeves slightly frayed at the edge, but her posture is perfect. She's not performing. She's remembering. Each note she plays is barely audible, like she's plucking ghosts from the strings. And beside her, a white kitten, curled in the crook of her ankle, snoring. But don't be fooled. This isn't a pet nap. This is a courier on standby. She pauses mid-phrase, adjusts the tuning, then leans forward to her basket tucked beneath the ginkgo roots. From it, she draws out a folded letter, yellowed at the edges, creased in all the places where thumbs have lingered. She reads it again, mouths the words. Your song climbed the wall tonight. I listened, and I wept. She folds it again, places it back in the basket, then takes out a fresh scroll. This one is thinner, less polished. She writes slowly, brushing each word like it might escape. I played for you again. The trees listen. I hope you still do. She rolls the scroll, ties it with red silk, and carefully tucks it into a pouch hidden beneath the kitten's collar. You know where to go, she says gently. The kitten yawns, stretches, and like a whisper made of fluff, trots off across the stones, tail arched like a musical note drawn in air. You follow, of course. There's an old belief, mostly folklore, mostly ignored, that cats can hear music differently. that certain notes vibrate in their bones, carry meaning humans miss. Whether or not that's true, one thing is certain. The cats of the music court were regular attendees. Some accounts even describe them lying beside instrument cases during practice, tails twitching to rhythm. One scribe noted, "A cat lay under the gaegeum. She did not leave until the 5th verse. Perhaps she disliked the modulation." Another, "A cat followed the court flutist for 3 days. On the 3rd, she brought him a flower. He married someone else. The cat stopped listening." You can't make this up. Or maybe you can, but someone already did, long ago, and someone believed it enough to write it down. That matters. The kitten darts through a narrow hallway lined with wind chimes, tiny ones, tuned to different pitches. The sound is dizzying, scattered, like wind having a full conversation with itself. And then she arrives. A boy, sitting cross-legged on the floor of a private rehearsal chamber. He's surrounded by sheet music and scrolls, none of it neatly arranged. His expression is unreadable, half focus, half ache. When the kitten trots in, he reaches out, hand steady. The scroll is untied, read, and folded shut again with an exhale. So long you swear it might be a final note. He doesn't write back. Not yet. He just picks up a flute, presses it to his lips, and begins to play. You listen. It's not a song of answers. It's a reply made of breath. And maybe she'll hear it. Or maybe the kitten will carry the silence between the notes back to her. Because sometimes music is the letter, and the cat, just the envelope. In one nearly forgotten tale, a blind musician in the lower ranks of the court was said to compose pieces inspired by letters he never received. When asked how he knew what to write, he answered, "The cat sits by me when there's sorrow. She leaves when it passes. That's enough." Years later, a set of love poems was discovered in his quarters, all unsigned, all tied with bits of thread, some still bearing faint paw hairs. Were they sent, returned, or simply written and waited for? No one knows. But his music lives on, so do the stories. Back in the garden, the girl continues to play. She doesn't know the letter has arrived. She doesn't know her kitten is curled now beside someone else's song. She only knows the strings still sing when she touches them. And somewhere, a cat still listens. And that, somehow, is enough. You wake from your reverie, or maybe you never slept. The garden's music has faded. The wind is hushed again, as if the palace itself is resting between breaths. And now you're walking further than you've gone before, out past the rear courtyards, through a narrow stone gate partially hidden behind overgrown vines. A place where palace walls begin to lose their perfect symmetry, where the official paths give way to old earth, and memory starts to crack the edges of history. Tonight, you're leaving the palace, but not alone. The cat is waiting. And this time, it's not delivering a letter. It's delivering someone. You hear them before you see them. 2 sets of footsteps, soft and cautious. One heavier, one light. Not quite equal. Not quite together. A boy and a girl. Not children. Not adults either. Both with the plain clothes of attendants. Their faces half wrapped in scarves more for anonymity than warmth. They move with the urgency of people who've memorized every shadow. And between them, trotting with purpose in a dust-covered red ribbon tied around her neck, is a calico cat, older than most, with a limp that slows her pace but not her determination. She remembers the way. The boy whispers. "Let her lead," the girl replies. You follow invisible, as they slip through an abandoned storeroom and emerge into a moonlit corridor behind a stack of unused palanquins. The palace guards won't check here. And even if they did, well, a cat isn't suspicious until she starts opening doors. They reach the outer wall. It looms above them, moss-covered and lined with iron spikes. But tucked beneath one stone near the far end is a hollow, small cat-sized, larger than it looks. You crouch to peek. The calico slips inside without hesitation. Then she turns, waits. The girl crawls through first. You hear her whisper, "Keep your head low. Don't look back." The boy follows. You think they'll leave without a trace. But then he stops, reaches into his sash, pulls out a scroll, and places it beneath the stone they just passed through. A message for someone who'll come after. Maybe a warning, maybe a thank you, or maybe just a goodbye. The cat meows once, and they vanish. There are almost no written records of palace escapes using cats, but there are plenty of oral tales. One of the most persistent describes a pair of lovers, a maid and a junior scribe, who escaped into the southern mountains with the help of a three-legged calico named Jangmi. The legend goes that Jangmi returned to palace once every full moon for the next 3 years, always carrying a fresh ribbon and sometimes small objects, a pressed flower, a coin, a hairpin, no letters, never again. Some say the lovers died on the road. Others say they made it. Historians still debate whether Jangmi ever existed. But in the servant quarters of certain old houses, scratched lightly into the wooden walls, you'll find a single phrase. Follow the calico. She knows. Back in the palace, someone finds a scroll left behind. A girl, maybe a laundry maid, maybe just curious. She opens it with shaking fingers. Inside, "If you're reading this, we made it. Don't wait for permission to live." There's no signature, just a sketch of a paw print, and a tiny heart drawn in the corner, barely visible unless you knew to look. You sit on the stone wall now, watching the moon begin to dip behind the mountains. The palace looms behind you, full of stories in silk, whispers, and watchmen. But out there, there's sky, and paths, and breath, and 2 people who chose to chase freedom with nothing but hope and a cat to guide them. You wonder if they're still walking. You wonder if the cat still remembers the way. Then you realize, of course she does. Cats forget nothing, especially love, especially escape. A final whisper rustles through the ivy nearby. You find another message, this one carved in wood, half faded by time. Thank you for your silence. You don't know who it was meant for, but you whisper back, "You're welcome," because sometimes that's all a letter is. A pause, a breath, a shared secret, carried in fur. It's nearly dawn now. The edge of the sky has begun to stain with the faintest blush of light, more suggestion than sunrise. The palace is holding its breath, still cloaked in the hush between the last dream and the first bell. You're in the garden again, but not the one with music or moss or marble pavilions. This one is older, wilder, half forgotten, a place where stories sink into the dirt. And tonight, something has surfaced. You find yourself beneath a twisted tree, its bark worn smooth where generations have leaned or hidden or simply existed unnoticed. The roots curl around a stone box, barely visible beneath years of fallen leaves. You kneel. The earth is soft. It takes just a moment to uncover it. The box is small, tin, slightly rusted at the corners. It makes no sound as you lift the lid. Inside, a single letter, wrapped in silk, tied with faded red thread, and resting beside it, a silver-white cat hair, long and curved at a comma that never found its sentence. You sit back, suddenly unsure, like you've stumbled into someone else's memory. You open the scroll, and it reads, "I didn't think I'd love you, and I certainly didn't mean to wait this long. But if you find this, if somehow this reached you, then you already know. I loved you, and I still do, even if only in ink. There's no date, no name, only the imprint of a paw at the bottom, barely pressed into the fibers, as if the writer had let the cat sign it." You close the scroll slowly, hold it in your lap, and breathe. Some say that during the last years of the Joseon Dynasty, when foreign envoys and internal chaos began to erode the delicate systems of court, a group of attendants buried the final messages they could never deliver. Some say there were over 50. Some say they were just rumors. But every so often, when someone digs too deep near the outer walls or clears ivy from old courtyards, they find one of these scrolls. Not official, not royal, but real. So heartbreakingly real that no one dares throw them away. The sun has started to rise now. The palace is waking. You hear the distant clang of a bell, footsteps, voices, water splash from basins, the rustle of servants preparing the day. But in this quiet corner of the world, the cats are still sleeping. You see one now, tucked beneath a stone lantern, curled into a perfect spiral of warmth and knowing. Its ear twitches. It's dreaming of where it's been, of who it's helped, of the scrolls it's carried, of the hearts it has quietly mended, and maybe, just maybe, of you. You stay until the first full ray of sunlight touches the garden. Then you rise, leave the box open, let the wind read what you've read. And as you turn to go, you glance back one last time, only to see the cat stretch, rise, and pad silently to the scroll. It presses its nose to the letter once, then curls back up and returns to sleep. Message received, message remembered, message kept, closing lull, final 300 words. And now, you're tired, but not the kind of tired that aches. The kind that feels full, like you just finished reading a story written in paw prints and perfume and patience. The kind of tired that comes not from walking, but from witnessing. You've seen what most never do, not in textbooks or documentaries or dusty museum labels. You've seen the slow rebellion of longing, the quiet fire connection, the poetry smuggled past palace guards by the softest of feet, the truth wrapped in silk and tied with red thread, meowing softly at midnight. You followed it across rooftops, between ink stones, through herb gardens and music courts, into laundry rooms and noble chambers and secret passageways carved by those who dare to hope. And now, it's time to let it rest. Let the scrolls sleep where they belong. Let the cats curl up beside old letters and whispered names. Let the palace forget for a little while. And let you drift. Let go of the lanterns. Loosen your grip on the thread. You don't need to carry the story anymore. It knows the way home. So close your eyes. Hear the soft tap of paws on tile. Feel the brush of fur along your ankle. Smell the faintest trace of ink and plum blossoms. And let the night take you. Let the letters fade into dreams. Let the cat purr once, just for you, and sleep